But my thing was always yoga. Every day, do my practice. That's the thing that sustained me the most and still does. I remember it very clearly. Went to the showers to go back to work. In the shower, I had this, one of those thunderbolt ideas, moments, and it just said, you need to teach yoga. To be so undisturbed by what was surrounding her, to be still so present with myself and my friend as students, it just hit home that she was a yogi, and how can I get more of that?
Hello, beautiful questers, and a warm welcome to the OneQuest podcast. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us on this journey of learning and self-discovery.
Our guests are not just mentors in wellness and self-improvement, they are adventurers at heart, sharing their unique paths and life lessons.
If you enjoy our show, please subscribe and share. Your support enables us to feature more amazing guests and deliver impactful conversations. Please note that some episodes may cover sensitive topics like abuse, mental health struggles, and personal challenges. Hello, Ginny. Welcome to OneQuest.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, Stephen.
I'd love to introduce Ginny today. She's from Living Peace Yoga. She's a seasoned yoga therapist and a level 3 senior teacher with Yoga Australia. Ginny has been enriching lives through yoga since 2003, expertly blending asana, pranayama, and meditation in her classes. Her sessions are renowned for their accessibility and the serene chanting that accompanies Shavasana. It's my favourite. Alongside her husband, Greg, Ginny leads yoga teacher training, nurturing the next generation of yoga instructors. And interestingly, she's inspired by her spiritual mentor, Ram Dass, and she infuses deep wisdom into every class she teaches. I'm so happy to have Ginny here with us today. She's been one of my yoga teachers for many years and certainly has been a mentor for me. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And of course, you have a beginner's yoga class on OneQuest.
I sure do. Yes. It is kind of one of my passions that as you go through being a yoga teacher, I think when I first started, I wanted to teach all of the advanced poses, get people enlightened and things like that. And over the years, who I really love teaching are beginners. That first moment when after their first Shavasana, their first class, and they walk out going, that was amazing. What just happened? And a lot of people saying it was a bit harder than they thought, but they feel more relaxed than they ever have, and they sleep better than they ever have. And it's just like planting the seed of yoga for the first time is a blessing.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more on the learning curve. It's so enjoyable seeing the excitement that someone has when they've just learned something new, and it's really hitting home. Yeah, I love it. I agree.
That's it. Yeah, thank you.
And what brought you to yoga to start with? Because I know you've been teaching yoga for a long time now, and I believe you used to do a bit of Kundalini yoga too at one stage. But was there something that kind of, I guess, encouraged you along that path? Like what made you be drawn to that?
When I think of my spiritual journey, and it might sound a little odd, but if you know Ram Dass, then this won't sound that odd. When I was about 23, I went to live in England for a few years, and I already had some friends over there, and they were very much into the rave scene. And I was a very good girl over here in Australia. Even throughout uni, I was a very good girl. And then when I went over to London, I started experimenting with a variety of psychedelics and things like that. And I say that was the beginning of my spiritual journey. It showed me another way. It tapped me into my mind, not the busy mind, or I think it'd be more like inner consciousness. And it made me see that I don't have to live the life that society thinks I need to live. So I say that's where it started. And then I lived in London for a couple of years, and on the way home, I decided to come home via India. As you do, I had £1,000 in my account, and I thought I'll just travel until that £1,000 is gone, and that was 9 months later. So spent a
wow.
Yeah. Okay, this is 25 years ago, and that's where I did my very first yoga class. So backpacking around India, right down the bottom of India. It was a Ayurvedic resort, but there was no one there except myself and my 3 friends. And they were doing a yoga class, and my friend and I said, "Yeah, let's try yoga for the first time," and we did. And I liked it. It was great. She taught us a salute to the sun. She taught us 10 steps of the salute to the sun. But what was amazing about her, and why I remember it so much, was that she was a young mum. She had like a probably 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, like a toddler. And there she was teaching yoga. I still had my Western mind thinking I paid good money for this, whilst this toddler treated her like a jungle gym. And the toddler was sort of hanging off her while she was in downward dog and running around us. And my mind was going, what's going on here? Good money I paid, like 50 cents for the whole class. And it was nice. And we finished the class. And then as soon as I got home, I started going to the gym and they had yoga there. And I went, oh, let's try that yoga thing again. I was hooked. And after doing yoga for a little while, I remembered that teacher and I remembered that toddler and the thought that now that was a yogi. To be so undisturbed by what was surrounding her, to be still so present with myself and my friend as students, it just hit home that she was a yogi and how can I get more of that? So therefore, my journey on yoga began. And I think I'd been only practicing about 1.5 years. And I remember it very clearly. Been to a class at the gym, went to the showers to go back to work. And in the shower, I had this, one of those thunderbolt ideas, moments. And it just said, you need to teach yoga. And at the time, and for up until that moment in my life, I was so shy. Like would blush at the drop of a hat. I worked in IT, and if I was in a meeting with my boss and my colleagues, if my boss looked at me and asked me a question, I would go beetroot red. I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and even I would be shy to talk in front of my whole family. Like that's how shy I was. So the thought of you should be a yoga teacher was just like, what you? I can't do that. I can't even talk in front of my family. How can I get up and talk in front of people? But the feeling was so strong, and I guess just my love of yoga was just that strong that off I went and found a teacher training, and I managed to get into it within a couple of months. A new input was starting, and off I went, and just that's how it started, and it's never stopped since then.
So you've done your first teacher training class, and then after that, how long did it take you to then start teaching and then go on to your next class when you felt like, okay, yes, I'm going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole to keep expanding and learning for yourself?
Well, the teacher training I attended was 2.5 years long. And so at about 1.5 years into it, a friend of mine who was already teaching a few classes in Newtown in Sydney, he said, I need someone to teach another class. Are you ready? And so I went, okay. So before I'd even got my certificate, I was teaching a few classes for about 1 year. And then, life got in the way and breakups and all that sort of thing. And so I stopped teaching only for about 6 months or so and started up again. And it was when I started up again, I moved up here to Lake Macquarie, and I was very much more on the energetic healing sort of path, still doing all the yoga. That was my basis. That was my go-to constantly every day. But the energy healing was there too. And that's when Kundalini entered my life, and I did a Kundalini teacher training. Probably would have been 5 years after my first one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the energy healing, was that just your interest and you were studying and you were self-learning, or did you go do courses on the energy healing as well?
I did courses. There was a place up here in Kurrambong that I went to, and where we did lots of sort of chakra healing and things like that. And it was a wonderful place to learn and grow. But my thing was always yoga. Every day, do my practice. That's the thing that sustained me the most and still does. It's, it's still part of my life in a way. I enjoy working with the chakras and feeling the prana, but it's a lot more subtle than what I was taught back then.
Excellent. And so your yoga studio, you've had that running since you got to Lake Macquarie, or it took you a while to open and establish that?
Yeah. So again, like opportunities, I've been so blessed in this life. I really have. As soon as I moved up to Lake Macquarie, there was another teacher in a hall up here teaching that I'd got to know. And she said, my students are, dying for another yoga class. So I started a yoga class with her. So I had like automatic students. She was teaching about 2 or 3 classes, and and then she'd been teaching here for 15 years or something like that, or 20, I think. And she got sick, and she said, it's time for me to hand over all my classes. So started off with about 4 classes and still doing my IT job. I did that for about 8 years. So taught from a hall, dragging your props in and out all the time, just with my little singing bowl that would be on the counter, and everyone would put their cash in there and sign in, very simple, very beautiful. Advertising was flyers in letterboxes. And after 8 years, it was just like, I really would love my own space. And this beautiful space became available, and we've been here now 10 years. This year was our 10th anniversary.
That's great. I love it. Wonderful story. So much in that, from £1,000 and 9 months of travel. That's fantastic.
Wouldn't get very far these days.
No. I like your 50-cent yoga class that started it all. That's fantastic.
There we go.
Yeah, amazing. And
already it was teaching me about me. That's what I love about yoga, is teaching me about my busy mind, my judging mind, my self-righteous mind, all those things from that very first class. And it still does that to today.
Certainly an ongoing process, that, isn't it?
Sure is.
Yeah. It's the that mind taming is so important, and it's really just continuing to have those tools available to you all the time, and really learning how to be more in touch with and more aware of what's going on is what I love about yoga, because it feels like no matter how much you learn, every time you sit in a class, even if it's the same information, I think because you come at it from a different place every time and you've grown and learned, things just resonate differently and they land differently for you. So it's amazing how much those teachings, they just continue to inspire you, and you continue to expand and have that higher awareness of it all the time. So I can see why you're sort of almost addicted to yoga. It is very addictive.
The best addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm fascinating to hear, how did your interest in Ram Dass start? Because he's just such an incredible spiritual teacher, and his teachings are just so fascinating and so relevant still even today. And there's so much information available from him and so many of his beautiful discourses, and I know that you weave a lot of that into your yoga classes. But how did that I know you've even met him. How did that actually come about?
Again, a lovely story, if you don't mind me sharing.
Please.
So my husband is Greg, or his spiritual name is Hanuman Das, and we went on our first date. So we met at this energy meditation center. Funnily enough, I lived in Sydney. He lived up here. We'd both been going for about 2 years. He was married. I was engaged. Once we'd both split up with our partners, one weekend we met, even though we'd been going to the same place constantly. So somehow our paths crossed. We met and we said, you want to go on a date next week? And we did. Now, in the car on the way driving to the Hunter Valley, Greg had Ram Dass on, I think it was a tape, not a CD, on a tape. And in Greg's head, he was going, Ram Dass will be my trump card. If I'm not working, Ram Dass will work. So we're driving along. He put Ram Dass in, and I'm sitting there listening, and there was something in it. In my head, I was going, I don't really understand what he's talking about, but I feel it. I feel it here. So the date went well, and it might have been my little trick. I said to Greg, Can I borrow that CD? Because I feel like I need to listen to it again. It was called Path of the Heart. And so he gave it to me, and I listened to it every day for about 2 weeks until I saw Greg again. And by the end of that 2 weeks, it was like, I get it. I get what he's talking about. And so my heart was just with him. He's no longer in his body, but his teachings are really sublime. They're eternal. I can listen to his teachings from the 1960s. If you've never heard of Ram Dass, go to YouTube. There's many, and he's got a podcast, the Be Here Now Network. But someone had incredible insight back in the 60s to record all of his lectures. And so he's got, I don't know, there must be thousands of lectures of his. And I can listen to one of his from the 60s, and I can listen to one from 2015. The message is the same. You know, he changed. There's maybe a different energy to it. There's not as much concepts and intellectual topics as he got older. But the feeling and the sentiment behind it stayed the same. And so to me, that means I just hear his truth. And so not whatever he says, but nearly everything he says for me is just like, yeah, that's my teacher. That's wherever he's getting his wisdom from, that resonates with me completely.
And Ginny, just for the listeners who aren't necessarily in this industry or are just discovering the wellness path, could you share a little bit about what you know of Ram Dass?
Ram Dass, yes.
Ram Dass?
Yeah. So his name was Richard Alpert. He is an American, and he was a Harvard professor in psychology. And when he was in psychology, the room next to him, the other professor, his name was Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was experimenting with LSD, and the LSD was all about getting to a higher consciousness. And they were both in the psychology realm, and so they both started experimenting with LSD and going, wow, this peace, this wisdom that happens when we're on LSD. But the problem is you come down, and you got to have LSD again, and you come down. And so they were experimenting on each other, with their friends, and also with students. And unfortunately, that got them kicked out of Harvard. And so from there, Ram Dass realized this going up, going down, going up, going down. And he said, there must be people out there who are up all the time. How can I get there without these drugs? He went to India, found his guru, Maharaji, who showed him the path of yoga and meditation and devotion. And straight away, as soon as he had met Maharaji, he said his heart burst open and he realized that was his guru. And so Richard Alpert became Ram Dass. Ram is another name of God, and Das means servant. So Ram Dass was the servant of God. He came back to America back in the 60s and just began sharing the wisdom of yoga, particularly the philosophy, some asana and pranayama as well, but in general, the philosophy of yoga and Buddhism. He did a lot of Buddhism as well. His teachings his teaching seemed just so clear and diverse as well. He knew many faiths, many paths, many religions, and he was able to very beautifully pull the different threads of each religion and show you how they meld together in the similarities.
Very nice. That's a great intro to him. Thank you for that.
Look him up.
Yeah.
And you got to meet him. Did you go to Hawaii to meet him? Was it after he had his stroke?
Yes. I think it was late 90s he had a stroke. And Greg and I went there, I think it was about 2007 or 2008. And we went on a normal retreat. So Krishna Das was there. So Krishna Das is a Kirtan walla. There were beautiful yoga teachers there, Buddhist teachers there, and Ram Dass. And the moment that Ram Dass and Greg met, it was profound. Those two, their eyes met, and they both started crying. And then everyone in the room just started crying. There was something there that I'm not saying that Greg was special or anything like that, but because they both have the same guru, there was this beautiful connection. And so we went on that big group retreat, And then 6 months later, Greg and I went on a personal retreat with Ram Dass. And so you'd go to his house in Maui, and they had a little converted garage on the property. So Greg and I stayed there, and every day Ram Dass would come and sit with us and have, I guess, a darshan or a discourse where we could ask him questions. And some days we would just meditate with him. And I told Ram Dass that Greg had just proposed a month earlier, and a month, maybe a bit more than that. And I said, Ram Dass, could you perhaps marry us one day? Next time we come back, could you marry us? And he said, yes, I could, but I'm nearly 80, so let's do it this time.
Wow.
So in 2 days,
Wow.
Greg, Ram Dass's assistant, took us to Maui markets, and I got that ring, which is a little silver ring with hibiscus on it. It was about $10. We got a ring. We had a beautiful, the beautiful Hawaiian leis, and lucky I had like a little white sundress with me. And Ram Dass married us in his lounge room, and it was just beautiful, just beautiful. And one thing I do remember, before he married us, he said, why? Why do you want to get married? And I said, I feel like we have work to do. And he went, okay, that's good. That's good. And then he drew a picture, a triangle, and it said G, G, and G. And he said, God, Greg, and Ginny, the three of you are united. That's where your union is to get you closer to God. And I said, okay, we can do that. We'll give it a try.
That's beautiful.
That's a great story.
Yeah, very blessed to have met him and been in his presence. And the thing with Ram Dass, and I've been with various teachers and the odd guru, not too many, but what I felt with being with him is that when I got home, there was this most subtle, beautiful shift in who I was. When I used to go to the energy healing, we would every Sunday would have these beautiful big satsangs, these gatherings, and we'd do energy healing on each other, and we'd get home and I'd be buzzing. But then I'd go back to schmucky old Ginny the next day. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And then, whereas with Ram Dass, you got home and there was this very, very subtle shift that continued, that stayed. So we went back another 4 times. And every time we saw him, it was an absolute gift.
And when you're in Hawaii, if you've been there that many times, they talk about the energy of Hawaii, the mana, I think it's called. Did you get to experience anything from the island yourself? Islands?
Not particularly, but then again, I'm at a retreat with my teacher, so that was more than enough. So I don't know if I could differentiate between the island versus being with Ram Dass.
It'd be great. I've been mentioning lately to a friend that it would be wonderful to go offline for a whole year, connect with nature, get back into nature, and like just remove all of these noises and the advertising and the vehicles and the hustle and bustle and everything that's going on, just to really try and feel that connection to earth and whatever you want to call it, mother.
Yes.
It would be incredible to experience something like that. Yes.
Well, when we were in India for so long, we did some of that. I think that's as well was part of my spiritual development, because it was all you had no responsibilities, which is beautiful. No responsibilities. What am I going to do today? How am I going to find my bliss today? And, living on a beach with no one there for a week, just beautiful. We had to cook our own food and make our own fires and wash in the ocean, just things like that. Going back to nature was, it's probably one of my passions at the moment, in terms of the world is so far away from nature and we need to come back to it. Not just nature outside, but inner nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned you were spending a lot more time just kind of almost in an integration phase recently, and just sort of pulling back a bit and really, I guess, taking that time to nurture what it is that your needs are and where you want your life to go. I'm fascinated to hear more about that, because I think it's something that we don't honor enough in ourselves, is taking that time to really connect in with ourselves and the people that are around us that we love so much, and really and get back into our heart again.
Yeah. Well, a year ago, my mum died, and that's a whole beautiful story there. Um, and I was her carer. I'd moved her from Sydney up to be with me, so I spent a lot of time with her. She had dementia, and that was one of the most enriching experiences I've had the last few years caring for her. Such a blessing. And so once she passed, to not have that responsibility of mum, uh, the feelings of grief, of course, that you're dealing with, something shifted. That moment she passed, something shifted. And it's just like, what is important for me? What is important? And that's what I've been working with the last year. And before that, I worked in IT, had IT and teaching yoga for a while. So 2 jobs for over 10 years, building up a studio, trying to teach workshop after workshop after workshop, starting a yoga teacher training, and looking after mum, all those sort of responsibilities. And so once mum had passed, it was this sudden like, I need to slow down. I want to slow down. And weird things started happening. Like I started loving cooking. All I wanted to do was clean the house and clean the windows and make things. And the beauty of just doing those simple things really came out. I stopped doing a lot of workshops this year, just did a few basic ones. And what I ended up really loving is just teaching yoga, realizing that I don't have to do all these other things, that maybe in a way I'd perhaps neglected my yoga classes because I was teaching, up to 12 or 14 classes a week, just, slamming them out, creating new classes all the time. And I think the students still enjoyed it, but I wasn't really giving of myself enough because I was pretty thin. So this year, just love teaching my classes, love connecting with my students more, not even creating new classes, just going back and consolidating all the classes. I have thousands of classes there. I don't have to create something new every time. So I was going back and finding a class going, oh, wow, that was interesting. How can I interpret that into how I feel now? And it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful just walking my dog, doing the New York Times puzzles with Greg every day. We sit down, is this beautiful half an hour of doing Wordle and connections. I don't know if you do New York Times puzzles, but, we just love that time of the day together. And it's been beautiful, just consolidating and sort of understanding more about who I am and the direction I'm going.
That's excellent.
So beautiful.
I find it entertaining for myself. I go and do my yoga class, and on Monday night I've got my normal yoga teacher, and I know her humor. I know like the type of flow she likes to do and things like that. And then she went off and traveled for 8 weeks doing retreats and whatever else, and we had this new yoga teacher, and she was just so different. Everything, her humor, the way she set the session up. She really liked to use the tarot cards, and the Fool's Journey is a 22 card deck or something, and so she'd do a class for each of the cards, and I was like, what is this? What is this nonsense? Like, where'd my normal class go? I want my normal class back, please. But in the end, it was really enjoyable just having that variety and stuff like that. So, I kind of get what you're saying about you're going back to the old stuff. You don't have to recreate it, new things, because I kind of like consistency personally. I like just knowing that I'm going to have a variation of what Jackie always does. But, when it's completely changed, I was like, what? What is this?
Right.
Yeah,
That's right. And sometimes I do that. Like sometimes I'll throw in a Kundalini class, and people who've never done Kundalini are just going, oh God, I'm never coming back to that again. But it's not what they expect.
Yeah.
Often people like it, but some people don't.
Well, that's the lesson there, isn't it, for ourselves to not be holding on to expectations. I'm expecting this type of class, and then it's like, no, you need to go with the flow a bit. This is life, right?
Non-attachment. One of the biggest lessons in the Bhagavad Gita in yoga is non-attachment.
There you go.
And a bit of an all-in-white Kundalini class is good for the soul.
It is.
And the cardio too, actually.
And the sweat and
Yes.
the discipline.
Yes, and feeling very alive.
Very
Yeah.
alive. Exactly.
Yeah. I remember very fondly the retreat mornings where you would say, everybody just turn up in white, and you'd think, oh shit. You knew what was coming, and it was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this.
But afterwards, it feels good.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, certainly does. And I wanted to ask you I know yoga is really a foundation for you, and is kind of your support there, and you kind of your main toolkit. And I mean, obviously teaching it every day pretty much is going to be a staple. But I wondered if there was anything else that you use as sort of a daily practice that really helps, like especially at the moment, to really sort of bring you back to yourself and keep you centered and out of that kind of overwhelm, especially when you're running a busy studio and you've got lots of students and lots of things pulling on you. Do you have like a go-to practice that you like to use?
Well, it is still yoga. Every day I do the same, my own personal practice. And then, so what I've found over the years is that I like to practice what I'm going to teach. But that means, is that for me or is that for the students? So over the years, what's happened is that the asana, I don't particularly need it. I do it enough. My body's fit and healthy. I don't have any injuries. So in general, the asana for me is for the students, and that's what I practice. And that might change day to day. But my staple is doing Nadi Shodhana every morning. Recently, I've added it with a mantra, which is the Gayatri mantra, if you're familiar with that. Inhaling a line, holding the line, exhale one line, hold the breath out with a line. So Nadi Shodhana is my staple every day. Mala beads are my staple. With either Ram Dass's mantra, which is I am loving awareness, so an English mantra, which I love, or the simple Om. Like even that, I said, I've been going back to basics. I used to have all these other mantras I would use, and I am loving awareness just hits right here every time I chant it. Or an Om. I mean, Om in the Yoga Sutras, Om means the divine. It's the sound and the vibration of God. Well, goodness gracious, why aren't I chanting that constantly? So lately, it's just doing, those are my two main staples. And I don't know if you're familiar with the bandhas in yoga. Yeah, so I apply the 3 bandhas. So a bit of breath of fire and the bandhas every day keeps my body and energy and mind nice and healthy. The other thing that's not necessarily yoga, but is quite, I guess, popular these days, and this is from the Kundalini tradition, although when I met Greg, he would have cold showers and I would think he was an absolute idiot. And then my Kundalini teacher told me we've got to have a cold shower every day. And I went, okay, Greg was right. And so that is my other staple every day, cold shower. And then I sit down and do my practices. So I feel my pranayama and my meditation are for me, for my development. And my asana practice is now, what I'm going to teach in class.
How long does that take for you to do your daily practice?
I try to do 40 minutes to 50 minutes, if not an hour of meditation, depending on the day. And then the asana might take half an hour. If I've got more time, I would do more. But they say in yoga that as we age, the ratios of what we practice changes. So when I first started yoga in my 20s, then lots of asana, hardly anything else. And then I started doing about half and half asana and a quarter meditation and a quarter pranayama. And now it's pretty much a quarter asana and the rest pranayama and meditation. So it just changes. I feel the asana is beautiful. I just want to move enough so I am functional in this life. I want to be able to, when I'm 80, get up and down off the floor, do up my shoelaces, reach to the top shelf, walk my dog. I want to do things like that. Poses I could do 20 years ago, I can't do now. Some of the arm balances, it's like, oh, well, can't do that anymore. But I don't think that's going to help me look after the grandkids one day.
And do you do this early in the day before you start? Like Do you get
Yeah.
up early?
Yeah, I'm a 4 o'clocker.
Very good.
I've always been an early bird, but 2-3 times a week I teach either at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. So I always do my practice before that. So I'll get up at 4, cold shower, do my practice, and then go and teach. And since I've got a puppy, a boxer puppy, he's usually up and about by 6:30. So on the days I'm not teaching, I still have to get up at 4 so I can do my practice before the dog is in my face.
Very good. That's a great routine. I love the 4 a.m. start. That's where I get the best parts of my day done, so that I'm
Yeah,
ready to start my day by 7-8 o'clock. Once I get home from doing my routine, I'm ready to go. I love it.
exactly. Exactly. It gives you the energy for the rest of the day. It's beautiful.
And it's a very early night's sleep as well. At that end of the day, I'm very boring.
Me too.
Yeah,
8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm just getting
that's it.
falling
Done,
asleep.
done. Yeah.
Yes.
And do you have any books or teachings or anything that you could recommend for something that's helped you along your way that you could pass on for others to look into?
Well, we talked about Ram Dass, so he's got books, he's got podcasts, but also the movie. If you want to learn more about him and his life and what it was like after his stroke, he's got a movie called Fierce Grace. And so if you can look that up, I highly recommend that. It's a beautiful movie. And the other thing I've mentioned a few times already today is the Yoga Sutras. If you're not familiar with that, it is to me it's the Bible or the how-to book of life for yoga. It was written 2,500 years ago by Patanjali, or he collated all of the ancient wisdom, picked out all the good bits, which is what I love, and put it in short little sentences called sutras. And that's what's by my bedside table when I need wisdom. That is the source I go to. You may need someone to go through it with you. Like first time I read it, I had no idea what it was about. But each time I read it and the different versions of it might give you a different taste of it. But to me, that is my go-to. It gives me everything from how to live my life. It's not so much about asana, how to do postures. It's not about that at all. Well, it's got 3 sutras on it. It's about meditation. It's about your mind. Yoga is about your mind, clearing the fluctuations of the mind, it says. And so it gives you these beautiful tools and techniques to do that.
That's great. Thank you. And do you personally follow a particular religion, or are you religious in what we might consider the normal religious pathway, or do you follow any teachings?
All of them, I guess. So I was raised a Catholic. I love a good church, love going to church, loving to sing the hymns and the more modern Christian songs. I love all of that. My daughter has just been baptized. So she's my stepdaughter. She's 25 and she's gone back to church and loves it. She's got a Bible group and all of that. And we go to church with her sometimes. I'm absolutely open to that faith. I love the Buddhist religion, even though it's not a religion, more of a faith or way of life. I love their teachings. And of course, there's Hinduism, which is part of yoga. Would I say I'm one of them? No. Why I love the Yoga Sutras is because it says in there that your Ishta Devata, you've got to find your Ishta Devata, which is your version of God, how you see and feel and imagine God is. And that's what I love about yoga, because I've got my own version of God, which I think we all do. In the Kundalini tradition, when I was learning to be a teacher, we had to do that. It came from the Sikh tradition. And so we did every morning something called Japji, which was like, it could be up to 30, 45 minutes of different mantras and prayers. And in this particular prayer called Japji, it goes on for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on the version you do. And it says, God is this, God is that, God is this, but God is none of those. God is everything. God is nothing. God is this. And it's like 45 minutes for saying what God is and what God isn't. And in the end, it's like, God is just in here. It's what you feel God to be. So I don't like to say I'm a particular religion. I'm all of them I love, and I think I want to garner the gems from each one of them. But am I inner religious? Yes. Do I believe in God? Almost definitely. God is around us all the time and within us, and you can see it in the sunrise. I see it in my dog's eyes. I see it with my family. I see it in the blessings of life. And every time I teach, when I'm looking around that room going, what a blessing to have these beings here who want to know more about yoga and wellness. And if we can all touch the lives of one person in this life, I think it's a good life.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I just want to make sure that I mention, because one of my favorite classes with you is Kirtan. And the joy of singing mantra and japa, and that's something that you regularly have at the studio, and I absolutely adore it. And you've got all the Indian instruments, and you've even written your own songs. How did you step into Kirtan? How did that become something that you were sort of passionate about?
Well, that started, I guess, early when I started attending teacher training. I started exploring different yoga studios, and there was a place in Sydney called Siddha Yoga, and they had weekly kirtans, and I went to one, and that was nice, and then went to another, which was like 3 hours of just kirtan, and they had chai and things like that. And I was so high, it's not funny. I was there by myself, and I went out to get a chai, and I was talking to everyone. I was going, I feel like I'm at a rave, like that sort of high, that happy, that ecstatic, purely on chanting. And I went, what is this stuff? And so went to Krishnadas when he came to Sydney for the first time, and went to him several times after that. Every time he comes to Sydney, we see him. And then one of my friends was doing kirtan, and he was going to India, and he asked me to look after his harmonium. Or actually, I asked him, could I use his harmonium while he's away? And just started playing with it. And for some reason, so the harmonium is like a piano that has a pump, and you pump the air through it. Beautiful sound. And as I was playing it, it did something to my voice. And they say that musical instruments can tune your vocal cords. And I truly believe it changed my voice so I could actually sing. My family would go, Ginny singing, oh my God. But it seemed to tune my voice. And then I started playing in the band with my friend who had a kirtan group. And then it just evolved into that. And Greg started playing the drums, and my friend Richard still comes and plays guitar with us. And he's a beautiful kirtan walla. Beautiful chants and beautiful voice. Oh, amazing. And my friend Ange as well. We do it together. So it's probably my way of really connecting to the divine through sound and music and mantra.
It's such a divine form of meditation, and you're right. It connects you in a way that's it's almost out of body.
Yeah,
and afterwards, like just the vibe in the whole room and how expanded you feel. It's hard to describe, but it's electric. Absolutely electric. It's like every cell in your body is awake, and there's a knowing, almost like you feel as though you've done this for lifetimes. This beautiful chanting, and it's almost like almost like a praying, isn't it? It's a prayer.
it is.
To God. It's beautiful. It's such a beautiful practice.
Well, I think of mantras as like magical spells. You recite it enough times, and the benefit of that spell blossoms. And so when you're in a group, you can do it at home. I don't find doing it at home, and it should be the same. But I find in a group, there's something about the group energy, and we're all in it together, and the sound and the vibration within the room, and a repetitive nature. So our minds love routine and repetition. That's where we find peace. If suddenly you asked me a question about, I don't know, something I don't know about, my mind would go, and it would go into tilt mode. Whereas when we're doing something similar, repetitive, our mind, our nervous system calms down, and then that, magic within the mantra can be revealed. So, yeah, it's a beautiful practice. If you don't know what it is, look up Kirtan.
Fantastic. And for someone who's interested in everything you've been talking about today, maybe stepping into yoga, or maybe they've been doing yoga but they've never tried Kirtan, what would your suggestion be for someone to sort of step into some of this work?
The thing with yoga is that it's very diverse. Modern yoga is very diverse. I even teach a very diverse range of levels of yoga, from restorative, really gentle. I do like what's called a gentle hatha class, which is some of the more, traditional poses, but done in a gentle way that beginners can enjoy it. And then general classes, a bit more dynamic. We might do some vinyasas. And then I teach experienced, which has headstands and handstands and a little bit faster and a bit physically demanding, as well as things like bandhas and deeper meditations. So when someone asks me, I'm going to such and such a place, how can you suggest a yoga teacher? It's kind of like you have to ring the teacher, tell them, your conditions, your level, and see if they're right for you. Because some classes I wouldn't recommend to some people. So investigate the style of yoga if you want to get into yoga, the level, and what you want to do. So I know some people come to me and they don't particularly like it because I'm not fast enough. Some people want more of a dynamic workout, and that's absolutely fine. So you've got to find that out. Same with Kirtan. Unfortunately, it's not that common in most areas. So I'm not sure. I think we're the only ones in Newcastle doing it. In Sydney, I know of a few people who run it there. So again, would have to look it up and research where it is. But all I can say is start a yoga practice. It's just magnificent. And it might be, even if you do 5 minutes a day, it is, to me, like this most subtle, beautiful, it's probably not the best word for it, but sandpaper. Just you do a little bit every day and it just keeps polishing you, polishing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's really enjoyable after my yoga class to get in the car and not want to put any music on, no radio, no nothing, and just be in that little ball of bliss coming out of the yoga studio where you've done something good for yourself, whether you're just there for a physical style of experience, you want something where you've done a bit of a workout, or you're there because you really want to clear the mind and just be able to focus on something. This coming from a layman's point of view, but walking out of there at the end of it and not having to put any music on because the mind is settled and feeling calm and everything, it's just absolutely bliss. It's great. Yeah.
Well, that's what it's about. You got it. Yoga is about the quieting of the mind. And so there's this beautiful stillness. Everything is okay. It's lovely.
And so much more. I'm sure there's so many more levels to the yoga experience and practices. But it's at a basic level for people wanting to get into it. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And then if you do want to do more, if you really want to understand yoga, I would suggest a yoga teacher training. I always find it hard to describe or labeling our teacher training as a teacher training, because I'd rather it be a yoga deep dive, or understanding yoga and how to live it. That's really what most yoga teacher trainings are about, because a lot of people come and do our training and they're just gobsmacked to say, oh, I thought yoga was just asana. I thought it was just moving the body. But no, we learn anatomy, we learn how to do those poses and teach them well. But then the philosophy component, people go, oh my God, this is life-changing. So the philosophy and the subtle systems of prana and chakras and vayus, the bandhas, all those sort of things just takes yoga from being a physical practice into a lifestyle and a spiritual practice.
Yeah, what I particularly enjoy is learning about, say, the root chakra and let's call it emotional elements that are attached to the root chakra. And as we looked down the list, I'm like, oh, I need work on that. I need work on that. Or the throat chakra. And it's like, I need work on that. And it's quite interesting. Like there's different elements that people can take from it. And that's one that I really enjoy looking at. Okay, well, this heart chakra is associated with these emotions or these feelings. And is that something that I'm struggling with at the moment? Should I do a yoga flow that's more centered around the heart chakra and things like? The more you want to get into it, there's plenty there. Like you said, philosophy.
There's plenty
a lot.
there, but I will just say from the true yogic point of view, the chakras aren't overlaid with anything. So yoga just says the chakras are sort of generators for your energy to move the energy through you. It was a lot later on, like is in the last 100 years or less, that more the new age spirituality has started to overlay colors and meanings to the chakras. Now, those meanings to the chakras, I think, are amazing. Meaning, I think it's the most perfect spiritual journey as you work with your security in your base chakra, you work with your sexuality and creation in your second chakra, you work with your self-esteem in your third chakra. Like, it's the most perfect system to get you to spiritual enlightenment. But do they overlay on the chakras? The ancient yogic texts say nothing about that. So just to be clear.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's been so good talking to you today. And it's there's so much there with yoga. It's such a fascinating deep dive. It feels like, I mean, I'd know with the teacher training, because I did the meditation teacher training with Greg. It's like you open this Pandora's box and it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's exciting at how much is there to really learn and how many things you can take from it and really use in your life. That they're not just tools, they're almost rules for life, which I really love. And no matter how many times I come back to yoga and to meditation and to the philosophies behind that, it never ceases to amaze me how much there is there to learn. And I think, oh, good, I've got that now, but there's still more and more and more and more and more.
Yes. New layers to our stuff that's lingering underneath us. Oh, we got rid of that one. Oh, no, it's returned again. All right, go and do your practice.
And how much those ancient wisdoms are still so relevant today. I find
Very
that
much so.
so fascinating.
Yep.
That it's actually almost feels more relevant today than maybe what it was when it was written. It's
Maybe, yeah.
It's fascinating. So thank you so much. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover today before we wrap up our chat?
No, that was beautiful. Lovely to chat to you. Thank you for letting me share my story. It's such
it was wonderful.
such a blessing to share yoga with anyone who'll listen. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. We'll speak to you again soon, hopefully. We'll get you back and we'll learn some more about where you're at.
Would love to do that. I want to put up some more courses on OneQuest. So Catherine and I were talking about that today. So I'm going to put my little thinking cap on and grab some of my courses and get them recorded for you.
Fantastic. Beautiful. And in the meantime, if anyone's interested, Ginny has a beautiful beginner yoga course on OneQuest that you can jump into straight away and really start getting into the juiciness of yoga. It's a beautiful introduction. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ginny.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.